Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Imperial Pizza, the best place to get pizza in Buffalo, period. 2 locations now, of course, the trademark Abbott Road in South Buffalo, and now also on Main Street in the city of Buffalo as well. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, whether you're watching, listening, following, subscribing. I appreciate y'all very much. Today is our weekly Podbag episode. This is the episode where you control the narrative, you control the topics of conversation here on the show. We'll get into this week's Podbag in just a minute here. First, a couple things I want to get into, a couple show things, some actual like Buffalo Bills news, so to speak. Minicamp has started. This is dropping on the video side late Tuesday night, on the audio side overnight into Wednesday. So we'll get into that as well. Before anything else, so I want to let you know, and this is pretty cool for me, big time cool for me. Want to let you all know, Eric Wood has an incredible podcast centered on Buffalo. Of course, everybody knows about his podcast. He's had some incredible guests on his show in recent months, ranging from sports media people like Sal Capaccio, Matt Perino, to many current and former players, Connor McGovern, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. They've all been on the show. Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott. So he's had pretty much everybody on his show. I am really, really honored and pumped to say that you can add me, Pat Moran, to the list of guests on Centered on Buffalo. That episode is going to be dropping on Thursday, shortly before I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon. I sat down with Eric to be a guest on his show. It was, again, an incredible honor, a lot of fun. We spent some time talking Buffalo Bills, of course, and we also spent a considerable amount of time talking about some of our favorite wing spots, pizza spots as well. So it was a really fun conversation with Eric. And again, it was a big honor to be able to be asked and be a part of his show. So anyway, make sure you check that out. Of course, I'll be promoting that on my social media. I'll drop some links in the show notes over the next couple of days. But yeah, that will be on Thursday. As for this show, Talking Buffalo, this week, Friday, I will have Del Reed, of course, the owner of 26 Shirts, co-founder of the original Bills Mafia. I'm actually going to be going out later this week to sit down with Del on location. We're going to record the show at 26 Shirts in Kenmore, and that will drop on this show Friday. And then the next 2 Fridays after that, I'm going to pick up with our Live from Imperial series. So 2 weeks from now, I'll be sitting down there with Sarah Holland, a sports reporter and anchor at Channel 4. She was on the show not all that long ago. I'm looking forward to sitting down with her, this time in person, and being able to talk some Bills and Sabres with her again. We'll be doing that at Imperial Pizza. And then the following week, I'm going to have with me live John Scott, who is now the sports director at WGRZ TV Channel 2 in Buffalo. So a busy couple weeks coming up with some really good guests here on Talking Buffalo. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Like I said, one last thing, then we'll jump into this mailbag. Got some pretty good questions too this week. Not a ton, so this won't be a particularly long episode, but some fun topics to definitely get into. Anyway, Bills mandatory minicamp began on Tuesday. Again, pretty much as I'm recording this, everybody in attendance, with the exception of Christian Benford, who was excused. It was an excused absence to attend to a family matter. I know there were some people out there worried I don't know why, but worried if Rasul Douglas would show up, because Rasul Douglas is the one Buffalo Bill who did not attend any voluntary, and let me emphasize that word again, voluntary OTAs. Might have led to some unhappiness with his contract speculation, although Tim Graham reported otherwise. Anyway, Rasul Douglas is in Buffalo for mandatory minicamps. In terms of injuries, though, I mean, holy shit. There's a lot. But before I get into any of the negative stuff, let's talk about one injury that is promising, and that is Matt Milano is practicing this week on a limited basis. So he's still not healthy. He's still got a ways to go, and I'm going to absolutely not speculate on where he's at and where he may be at about 6 weeks or so from now when training camp starts. But the fact that he's on the field, even in a limited capacity right now, to me, is incredibly promising. But anyway, Sean McDermott said on Tuesday, he had a press conference, linebackers Dorian Williams and Nick Morrow, Bale Inspector, the rookie, who, by the way, I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce this young man's name correctly, but Ejufon Olafusio, forgive me, I'll get it right. Anyway, him, running backs Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, fullback Reggie Gilliam. None of them are participating in a mini camp practice on Tuesday. New safety Mike Edwards, starting right tackle Spencer Brown, and like I mentioned, Matt Milano are being limited as mini camp gets underway. And I just ran down an injury list in June that sounds like the Bills are like literally in midseason form, the way it's been the last couple of years, just absolutely snake bitten with injuries. Obviously, it's only June, so no cause for panic at this time, but still a pretty lengthy list of people as we kind of get ready to start closing in anyway on training camp. A pretty lengthy list of people not able to participate. So that's something we will definitely be keeping our eyes on. On that note, let's just dive in right now. Again, this is our weekly pod bag. If you want your question, your comment, your take, and it could be about Buffalo sports, regular sports, quite literally anything you want except politics. You're wasting your time. If you send me a tweet or a message about politics, that shit ain't getting on the air. But aside from that, if you want to be a part of the show, which we are doing, at least for now anyway, things might change when the season starts. But for now, we're doing this every Wednesday. So you can either go on YouTube, go to any video, because all of our episodes, our full-length episodes, are available on YouTube. You could simply leave a comment, and if I like it, I'll pull it from there. Or you could tweet at me at Patrick Moran TV on Twitter, or you can email me at talkingbuffalopodcast@gmail.com. Anyway, let's dive in here. At Conrad AZ9 says, who are a few Buffalo Bills veterans that you think could most likely be cut candidates at training camp? Good question. I like this one. And look, every year there are veterans who get cut, whether it's the Buffalo Bills or the 31 other teams. There will be some name players who probably will not, at least initially anyway, end up making the 53-man roster. I got 4 off the top of my head, and none of them are necessarily huge shockers, but notable names, at least in some cases anyway, pretty notable names. And yeah, I think now look, injuries could change everything, of course. You know, these guys, I'm not saying any of these are a lock to be cut. None of these guys are a lock to be cut by any means. But as things stand right now, and if I were to do a 53-man roster projection right now, which I'm not, but if I were, these are 4 players that I probably would not have on my list. I'm going to start with the big name that a lot of people probably would agree with, and that's Damar Hamlin. I say that because I think if the Bills keep 4 safeties, 10 defensive backs in total, I think you're looking at Taylor Rapp is obviously a lock. Cole Bishop, is obviously a lock. Mike Edwards, if he gets on the field, because he's still, for whatever, I don't even know exactly what it is actually, but he hasn't even been able to practice with the Bills right now. But anyway, the Bills signed Mike Edwards from Kansas City. He's a lock. And I would say Cam Lewis. The name escaped me for a second here. I don't got notes in front of me. I just got the questions. Cam Lewis is making his football team. He is a versatile safety. The Bills re-signed him pretty early in the free agency process. He is a guy who's valuable on special teams. He could play some nickel slot if needed. He's a valuable player, a kind of a utility guy to have on this 53-man roster. Those guys are making the football team straight up. And Damar Hamlin, again, and so that's 4 safeties. I think you can count on the Bills keeping 6 corners, probably 10 defensive backs in total. So, barring injury or barring Damar Hamlin coming out and really balling out during camp in the preseason, which is utterly possible, I could see Damar Hamlin being that big name cut for the Buffalo Bills. Another guy, Leal Collins, I think there's at least a chance that maybe he's washed at this point of his career. I mean, the Bills are obviously set at offensive tackle. I thought originally when he signed that he was going to be the guy to maybe perhaps challenge David Edwards for a starting guard spot. But I'm pretty sure, I think it was Sean McDermott, maybe it was Beam, but I'm pretty sure it was McDermott who said that they plan on having Collins play, at least start out camp at tackle. Now, that could change, but I look at the tackle spot, and if he's not the swing tackle, I could see him getting cut. The punter, Sam Martin, I think he could get cut. I thought it was interesting that they already cut Matt Hawk, which at first would, on the surface might seem like, well, they're pretty set on Sam Martin, but I do not believe that's going to be the case at all. The undrafted free agent, Browning, the punter, I think that's going to be a legitimate competition. And look, I'm no punting guy whatsoever, but everything I've heard, everything I've seen indicates that Browning has a legitimate chance to make this football team. So it would not surprise me at all. And again, I'm just listing Sam Martin as a legitimate cut candidate right now. I'm not even going as far to say that I'm predicting it. I just think he is a legitimate cut candidate at this point. And then the last guy is actually a free agent signing this offseason. I'm going to go with Casey Toohill. And I say it because of this. I think the Bills are going to, all right, so you got Greg Rousseau, you got Von Miller, you got AJ Epinesa. Those 3 set in stone locks. Dwayne Smoot, short of being a disaster this summer at camp in the preseason, anything short of being a disaster, he's making this football team. And his contract, his guaranteed money, tells you that he's making this football team. Again, short of being a colossal disaster or such a poor fit that the Bills don't even care about the guaranteed money, which wouldn't be unprecedented. They did it a couple years ago with O.J. Howard, gave him guaranteed money, and he didn't even make it out of camp. But again, short of being a disaster or for whatever reason, a horrible fit or just isn't healthy, Smoot's making this roster. So there's your top 4. Javon Sullivan, the Bills drafted in the 5th round. I wouldn't expect him to play much this year. He might not even play at all. He might be redshirted, in fact. Probably going to be inactive an awful lot this year, his first year. But a lot of upside, high ceiling. I think he'll work with Von Miller a lot during camp. He's making this roster. The Bills didn't draft him in the 5th round to cut him, unless he really sucks at camp, unless there's something about him that Sean McDermott doesn't think will equate to ultimately becoming a good NFL player. But I expect him to make this roster, even if he's going to be inactive most weeks. So there's your 5. And if they keep 6, which I do think they would keep 6, especially if Javon Sullivan is going to be one of the first 5, and a guy coming off injuries like Smoot is going to be in that top 4, not to mention Von Miller, of course, being a risk. I think they keep 6 defensive ends. So it comes down to Casey Toohill versus Kingsley Jonathan. And going into camp, seeing it with my own eyes, at least anyway, I've always liked Kingsley Jonathan. I think he's kind of lacked opportunity. I don't think he's a star, but I think he is an adequate, serviceable NFL player who Sean McDermott knows well. He knows the system well. So I would say going into camp right now, if all things are even, probably would give the edge at this point, at least anyway, to Kingsley Jonathan. So there you go. I got DeMar Hamlin, Al Collins, Sam Martin, and Casey Toohill. My four most likely veteran incumbent cut candidates. One more, then we'll take a quick break and we'll really get rolling here. Chad says, are the Bills making any other real moves before training camp, or is this roster just about set? Good question. And I'm starting to wonder that myself. I would have said, in fact, we did a show not that long ago, near the end of May, that the Bills come June 1st, when they would get more cap relief because of the trade white cut, even though a lot of that money went to the rookie class. I get that. And Keon Coleman still technically isn't signed. But that gave the Bills some more maneuverability to do something with free agents. But that hasn't happened. And now I'm starting to wonder if it's going to. I thought maybe a month or so ago that they might wait to June 1st, but they actually added people, and they added Dwayne Smoot after the draft. They added MVS after the draft. They added Chase Claypool after the draft. So I'm not sure what they're really going to add, if anything. Maybe other than a journeyman who might be, at best, outside opportunity to make this roster, at worst, just camp fodder. But I'm a little surprised. I'm not going to lie. I thought offensive guard and cornerback would have been added to this roster before camp. But we're like nearly into mid-June now. And the Bills are having mandatory minicamp right now. So it kind of feels like if they've had their eyes on anybody, it feels like it's getting a little bit late in the process to, not that it's too late, but starting to question if they're really going to add anybody else. I really thought they were going to bring in somebody to challenge David Edwards. And it feels to me, as things stand right now, at least, that David Edwards, I would have said before the draft, you could write him in at starting guard, but you might want to do it in pencil. I'm getting close to the point where you could take a black Sharpie and put David Edwards in as your starting guard, because if they're not adding anyone else, he's winning that job. And then corner, you're set at starter. Kyrie Elam is your third. Jamarcus Ingram's going to be in the mix. But I would have liked to have seen another veteran added in case Kyrie Elam just simply isn't that guy. So they haven't done that. And quite frankly, I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't. We'll see, because there's still time before camp. But as of right now, sure, I'm starting to wonder who they're really going to add, if anybody, to this roster before camp. Real quick break, come back. Got some more submissions from you guys. All right, we are back here with our weekly pod bag. This is the episode where you control the narrative of the show with your questions, your comments, your takes. Next one. Aside from Josh Allen, who's the Buffalo Bill that this team can least afford to lose to a major injury? Last year, I would have said Diggs, Trey White, or Milano. Two of those three are now gone, and Milano was done within a month last year. All right, that's a good question. I like it. Not fun, because to answer it, you have to think about somebody going down with an injury, and that's never fun. I would say, in this case, for me personally, with the makeup of this roster, this was relatively easy for me. And I would say Greg Rousseau. That's my guy. That's who I would pick right now. I think, you go to last year. Let's talk about the guys you said, Diggs and Trey White, who are gone. Well, Trey White goes down. You traded for Rasul Douglas. You still got Benford. Still got Elam in the mix. Which, by the way, one of these weeks, we're going to have a legitimate deep dive conversation into Kyrie Elam, because I still think there's something there with him, and I still think he's better than a lot of people think. But anyway, Trey White, I don't want to go as far as say replaceable, but a little more easily replaceable than other positions. Stephon Diggs, they're doing it, man. They're doing it. They got a receiver by committee, which, by the way, more on that here in just a minute. Man Milano, obviously a huge injury last year, and that really hurt this defense. But I look at this roster right now, and if you take Greg Rousseau out of the mix, you're left with Von Miller, AJ Epinesa, and Dwayne Smoot. Those are your three top ends in a lineup without Greg Rousseau. That is thin. That is scary. That is dangerous in the season right now. And there's lots of players if they go down. If Teron Johnson goes down, that is a killer. If Matt Milano gets hurt again, that sucks. That hurts a lot. If Dalton Kincaid in year 2 goes down, that's a big injury. Deion Dawkins, I would give him honorable mention as well. You don't want to lose your starting left tackle. He's a Pro Bowl, multi-time Pro Bowl left tackle. I'm not saying it's only Greg Rousseau, but to me, you got to get after the quarterback. You got to be good on the defensive line. You are putting an awful, awful lot, as it is right now, even with Greg Rousseau, on Von Miller being pretty good. You lost Leonard Floyd. You didn't draft literally anybody in day 1 or day 2 of the NFL draft to play edge. The only thing you've added is Dwayne Smoot and Casey Toohill. And you lost Leonard Floyd. That's a disadvantage compared to last year. Now you got to hope Von Miller is going to be close to maybe what he was 2 years ago. I mean, he's not going to be vintage prime Von Miller anymore, but you got to hope he doesn't suck, that he's not washed. But Greg Rousseau has been like right on the cusp of being great during his time in Buffalo. I think he's been very good. He is a balanced end. He can play the run. He can get you 5 to 8 sacks, which is what he's done so far in his career. But he hasn't missed a lot of games, but he's had a lot of nagging injuries that have slowed him down. And I look at this defensive line this year, and he's the key to it. It's not Von Miller, because I kind of feel like I know what I'm going to get from Von Miller. Greg Rousseau has the opportunity to really become a star and go out there and get a crazy big extension, a big contract. He's playing for a lot this year. So if he were to go down, that defensive edge spot, that defensive line would suffer greatly. And again, there's other positions that would certainly suffer, but I don't see any more than the edge position, which Sean McDermott cares about that position. So to lose Greg Rousseau would be a huge blow. At BF Walsh, 2424, there isn't enough blame on McDermott. The wide receivers, other than Shakir, were awful last year, and people forget that the great wide receivers coach left because of a rumored rift with McDermott. The players loved this coach so much, they bought him a truck, which reportedly McDermott resented. Coincidence that the whole wide receivers play suffered when he left. All right, and by the way, the coach that he's referring to that left laterally for the same job was Chad Hall a couple years ago, who went to Jacksonville. Thanks very much, BF, for the comment. I do appreciate it. Whether I agree with the comment or not, I appreciate everybody who takes the time to write in and leave a comment. I really do. But look, blaming the wide receiver play on Sean McDermott is really odd to me. Play suffered last year because the wide receiver position, I should say, the play suffered last year because Gabe Davis was banged up. And when he wasn't banged up, inconsistent, which has been the story of Gabe Davis's career, quite frankly, during his time in Buffalo. Banged up a lot, inconsistent a lot, a big game one week, then he disappears for a couple more after that. So I'd say that is a big reason. I would also say, if you want to blame Sean McDermott, I mean, if you're going to blame somebody for bad wide receiver play last year, I feel like you should point the finger at the general manager. Take your blame finger and put it more in the chest of Brandon Beane. Because Brandon Beane's the one out, he's the guy who went out and he signed Deontay Hardy. Brandon Beane's the guy who went out and signed Trent Sherfield. And let's be honest here, man, both of those guys turned out to be bad free agent signings. And they had a couple moments, especially that Miami game. You know, if I would have told you that Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield were bad signings the day after the regular season finale in Miami when the Bills won the AFC East, you'd be like, well, that's a pretty stupid statement. And you would have had merit at that time. You know, Deontay Hardy, a big touchdown catch in the end zone. Trent Sherfield, a big catch in the end zone for a touchdown. Deontay Hardy takes a punt back to the house, literally swung that game. So I get it. That's one game. But on the whole, Hardy and Sherfield were big-time disappointments, especially Hardy, because they gave him some significant money. That's on Brandon Beane. How's that on Sean McDermott? That's confusing to me. Gabe Davis getting hurt, being inconsistent. I don't see that on Sean McDermott. In fact, I remember Gabe Davis had I think it was against Denver, a really bad drop. James Cook fumbled the ball, which really wasn't even his fault. It was a great play by the Denver defender. And then James Cook got benched for a quarter and a half. Next drive, or it might have been the drive before that, ball goes right off Gabe Davis's hands, is picked off by Denver, and Gabe's right back out the next series. So I don't know how you put that on Sean McDermott, the receiver play suffering. If you're trying to say that Chad Hall is the reason why the Bills wide receiver play was good and him leaving led to the Bills wide receiver play suffering, I would disagree. Again, it's personnel, which is on the GM. In terms of Stephon Diggs, I mean, guess what? He caught 100 passes or more when Chad Hall was the wide receiver coach. And he caught over 100 passes when Chad Hall was not the wide receiver coach. So thanks for the comment. I really do appreciate it. You can blame Sean McDermott for a lot of shit that's wrong with the Buffalo Bills, but wide receiver play suffering, man, I just can't get behind that. All right, this is a long one, but worth reading. At Bills Mafia Experience. Joe from Queens, which, by the way, your couple here are my guy Joe from Queens. Take some heat right now in these next couple of comments. But anyway, Joe from Queens is missing the point. Bills are bringing back the same team that had the Chiefs on the ropes in the divisional round, except they clean out the deadwood, got rid of the locker room cancer. Hate that. You know who he's talking about there. Don't agree. But anyway, that's what he says. Let's continue. Deleted the dropsy four, Diggs, Davis, Sherfield, and Hardy. Kept every player who mattered and excelled. For example, Shakir and Kincaid, who got us there the last maybe 13 games, including the playoffs. Then they added sure-handed receivers who won't drop those playoff bombs from Josh Allen. Even got a legit deep threat who's not a smurf while taking that from Kansas City. Let's be honest. MVS is underrated. He's a good guy with a good career yards per catch who's no worse hands-wise than Gabe Davis, but with more speed. But that's far from all they got. They added the underrated Samuel, sensational, his words, not mine, sensational rookie Keon Coleman, and yes, a dynamic threat in Chase Claypool. Maybe, just maybe, he is ready to fight hard for his NFL career. Maybe it will benefit us. Can't hurt if the dude with that kind of talent is our wide receiver 6. We have other options, and I think Matt Collins is another underrated guy who can at least we can use situationally to our advantage. That's a net improvement in my book. Davis was a bust year 4. Situationally, he was bad when we needed him. His blocking ended up being his only positive. Sherfield and Hardy were lost and showed poor effort. We don't need that. We need hungry, and we got that now, I believe. Like Dan Orlovsky said, the Bills have a top 5 wide receiver room in terms of having diversity and ability to create mismatches all over the field. They are underrated. The focus on hands has made this wide receiver core better. And the best receiver we might have is tight end Kincaid. But that's not a bad thing. He'll likely have over 100 targets this year and north of 1,000 yards. Critics be damned. Man, I don't know, dude. Are you as tired writing that as I am reading that? That was a vocal workout. But in all seriousness, thanks. I'll say this too. You do have some fair points. The part about Joe, which I'll get into in a minute, Joe is not high on the receiving unit at all. He thinks he's taking a major step back. Not by himself. Lots of people have said that. Bills Mafia experience here is defending the current room, which is fair. I get it. I think your optimism may be a little higher than it should be warranted. I don't hate MVS. I've said it before. I'm happy the Bills signed him. He is when you hear the term, he was worth the flyer, MVS is 100% worth the flyer. He is a big guy. He's not a smurf like you said. He is a deep threat, and he does drop the ball. But he has stepped up multiple times, multiple years in the playoffs. Like that signing, I got nothing nice to say about Chase Claypool until I see it. Not in OTAs and T-shirts and shorts. When I see it with pads, when I see it at a training camp or an intense practice or preseason game, maybe I'll start to put a little bit of stock in him. But right now I got zero. Very torn on Gabe Davis, who you're pretty dismissive of. I get that. But yeah, I'm just not gonna put a lot of stock into Chase Claypool. I will say this though. I do like Matt Collins. We don't talk about him enough. He's gonna be that fourth receiver. He was good a couple years ago with Vegas when he had probably the 1 year in his career where he had real opportunity. Kind of took advantage of that. So kind of high on Matt Collins. But yeah, Claypool, no. And as for Kincaid, look, I like him. He's a good tight end, very good tight end, really close to being a great tight end, and he has the ceiling to absolutely be one of the elite tight ends in the NFL. But let's pump the brakes a little bit. And you're not the first person, by the way, to put 1,000 yards on him in year 2. I'm not going to say it's unrealistic or impossible, but I'm just going to say that writing down Dalton Kincaid for 1,000 yards receiving is lofty. You are putting a very lofty goal. I went back the last 2 years. Last year in the NFL, there was but one tight end who had 1,000 yards receiving, and that was just barely, and that was George Kittle. 2 years ago, same deal. Only one tight end in the NFL had 1,000 yards receiving for the year, and that was Travis Kelce. So again, that is incredibly lofty standards to put on a player who I think is going to be a big part, but still at the end of the day, part of what will be an offensive pass catching committee. So yeah, man, thanks for the comment. Really appreciate it. But yeah, that was a very fan-friendly, understandable, of course, fan-friendly comment there. At officials or official Slim Dev, don't bring Joe from Queens back. Curtis Samuel had similar production to Gabe Davis with Sam Howell and Teddy Bridgewater, and that's only one of his bad takes. All right, well, I thank you for that take, and it actually gave me a good laugh, not going to lie. So thank you, Slim Dev, for that. Look, I'm 100% going to bring Joe from Queens back. Look, I like having somebody on the show who will disagree with, who go against the grain, who's not going to always have the positive reaction to a move that the Bills make or positive outlook on everything. Is he too negative at times? Absolutely. Kind of like that mix though that I have on the show with him. And I will say this about Joe, and I'm going to give him credit for this. If nothing else, I'm definitely going to give him credit for this. When Joe says he thinks the offense is going to take a step back, when Joe says that the wide receiver room is worse because they lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis compared to what they brought in, when Joe says that he thinks they're only going to be a 10-1 team or 10-win team, if Joe says, and he did say, the Super Bowl window for now is closed. Now, do I believe it? No. I've openly disagreed, and I don't want to say we fought about it, but we've debated it on the show. But here's where I'll give Joe credit. He's saying what he believes to be true. Like, he believes what he's saying, as opposed to a lot of people out there. We have focused on Emmanuel Acho a lot lately on this show because of his absolutely ridiculous, stupid takes that he does for reaction. The season world windows closed, drywall, the bar in front of the drywall, all that stupid shit. He doesn't even believe that. He's saying it because he knows it's going to incite a reaction from Bills Mafia. Joe legitimately feels what he says. I'm telling you. And I know that for a fact. If anything, in a a content creating game where to some extent, myself included, we say things that we think the fans, to some extent, at least anyway, what they want to hear. We want to cover topics. I want to cover topics that I know you want to hear about. Joe, and this is not a compliment or an insult, it's just the truth. He don't give a shit about most Bills fans and what they think. So I like that part. Me and him have our beefs, most of it off the air, not a secret. Last year he went most of 2023 not on the podcast because we had a rift to fall out. I'm not saying who's to blame. We both are. We've already hashed that out. But my point is, I kind of like having somebody come on. You could I call him a curmudgeon at times, but I kind of respect somebody who's going to take the opposite side of things and be open and honest about how they feel. So anyway, I'm going to have Joe back. And I don't even think you really meant that. Anyway, as far as Curtis Samuel, look, I did look it up. Production last 2 years, 62 catches last year, 613 yards. Year before that, 64 for 656. Gabe Davis last 2 years, he's had 746 and 836 yards receiving. So not accurate. Gabe Davis has been more productive. In fairness, Gabe Davis has played with an elite quarterback, and Curtis Samuel has played with garbage, to your point, which you are 100% right about. 2020, Curtis Samuel, 77 catches, 851 yards, plus 200 yards rushing. And of course, that was the year Joe Brady was the Carolina coordinator. So a lot of promise there. But at this point, to say that his production is as good or better than Gabe Davis, just not accurate. All right, a couple more here, and then we're going to get out. At Sean Kula, 11B. Tua coming up short isn't a small sample size. Last year alone, he was 1-6 versus winning teams and was part of two of the worst collapses in recent NFL history. He's also never won a game when it was 40 degrees or colder. All right, let me preface something. Thank you for that comment, Sean. I ain't fact checking, so don't hold that as the Bible right now. What he said, that they're 1-6, or he's 1-6 versus winning teams, or that he's never won a game when it's 40 degrees or colder. That's what he's saying. I ain't going to fact check it. You can if you want. But what I will say, and I've talked about this literally just on the show yesterday, Tua's got plenty to prove. To me, he's a stat box guy right now. You look at it, and, this is one of my big beefs with Joe, because not too long ago, he pretty much said Dak Prescott was just about as good as Josh Allen and cited stats. Stats don't always tell the story. You can run up the score. You can run up the stats against shitty-ass football teams. Then what, they put up 70 points Miami did on Denver in one game last year. But show me in November and December. I look at a guy in Tua, and I watch him play plenty, and I see a guy who throws the ball up and has two of the greatest receivers in the sport make plays. I see a guy who throws, quite frankly, at least a handful of very interceptable balls every week, at least from what I see. I see a guy who makes some really bad decisions in key moments. We saw it last year. Look no further than the Buffalo Bills going to Miami, Hard Rock Stadium, last week of the season and winning the division when Miami had a chance at the end of the game, and Tua got picked by Taylor Rapp, which one play before that almost got picked by Taylor Rapp twice. So I don't buy Tua. But I will say this right now, when I say a stat box guy, I felt like that about Alex Rodriguez on the baseball side for most of his career. And he won some MVPs. He put up some absurd numbers, but who gives a shit? They were like, who gives a shit stats? Like, A-Rod was the king of going 2 for 5 with a home run and 4 RBIs in a game that, whether it's Seattle, Texas, Yankees, take your pick, where they would win 9-2, or they would lose 7-2. Games that it didn't really affect the outcome too much. A-Rod was a stat patter, just had a ton of great numbers, and then he flopped when it mattered the most. That was A-Rod most of his career. Then, in 2009, he put the Yankees on his back and won a World Series. Maybe Tua could do that. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility that Tua could put it all together and become that guy who could put his team on his back and will his team to a Super Bowl. It is in the realm of possibility. Miami has a very, very talented football roster, but I am not sold on him. I think he's got a lot to prove. I don't think he's even sniffing the top, say, 7 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And if you got him in your top 7, I think you're crazy. I'm not going to go through him right now because we're too late into the show. But come on. There's no way he's a top 7 quarterback right now. He's a guy with plenty to prove, and I know it's going to piss off a lot of Miami fans, but it's true. All right, 2 more non-Bills questions here. At Mr. Ed 315, if Buffalo will never see an NBA team, then how about a WNBA franchise? Would the Western New York community support it? You know, I've been thinking about this since I saw this. I don't know. But, well, here's what I do know. Buffalo ain't going to get an NBA team. That's 100% right. As long as the Buffalo Sabres are in town and they ain't going nowhere, there's no way that this market could support 3 men's major sport professional franchises. There's just no way. It's a great question, though, WNBA. I honestly don't know. I really don't. I don't know enough about the WNBA other than 2 things. One, the Caitlin Clark madness. I mean, everybody knows about the WNBA right now, primarily because of Caitlin Clark. Good, bad, the ugly of it all. And I don't know if it's good or bad or not. I really don't. I mean, on one hand, it's bringing a lot of attention to the sport. On the other hand, a lot of the tweets I see, a lot of the clips I see, a lot of the stories I'm reading are negative about the WNBA. Players getting testy, just a lot of ugliness. So I don't even know if it's good or bad. I know it's good in Indiana because their home attendance for their games has went up by like 300% since Caitlin Clark came into the league. But that's the one thing I know. So Caitlin Clark madness. The other thing is, and I'm just being honest, and it's not right, but I'm just being honest. I don't even know anybody. I legitimately don't know anybody who cared about the WNBA before this year with Caitlin Clark. I honestly don't. And I don't know enough to say definitively that whatever the league attendance average is, that if Buffalo were to have a franchise, I don't know, what is it, 7,000, maybe 7,000 a game? Could a Buffalo market do that for however many home games they have per year? I really, truly don't know. Would I like a WNBA franchise in Buffalo? Of course. Why not? Sure. I love basketball. I love women's basketball. Not a hater of women's basketball. I just don't follow the sport that much. And now with the Caitlin Clark stuff, I think a lot of people are sticking their nose, so to speak, into the sport for the wrong reasons. But I would love to hear from any WNBA fans out there who might have a more informed opinion than me if you think that this is a region that would be able to support that team. And then last one here at Fast Track 550, more Bandits talk. Tell you what, talked about this a little bit last week with PK. I am more committed to covering the Bandits going forward than ever. I'm embarrassed. I talked about it last week with PK too. I think it's embarrassing that this show did not cover the Bandits this past season, especially considering the fact that they were literally the defending champions. I think, maybe so much in the regular season, not as much. But once it got near playoff time and they went on a playoff run, I think it's disgraceful that Talking Buffalo did not make any concerted effort to cover the team. I think it's embarrassing, just the blanket coverage of the Western New York market, generally speaking. And that's the newspaper, it's the radio, it's the TV outlets, it's the blogs. I think it's pretty disgraceful to have a team that's now back-to-back champions. And until they get into the playoffs and maybe even to the championship round, the media really, for the most part, let's just be real here, don't give a shit. And I'm calling myself out too. I think it's, again, disgraceful for this show to not do a better job. So I am going to be far more committed to covering the Buffalo Bandits because A, the team deserves it, and B, the fans. And I don't know how many Bandits fans there are, but what I do know from what I've seen is they're loud and they're nuts. They fill up that arena, and the atmosphere at a Bandits game is absolutely insane, as opposed to the funeral type atmosphere that going to a Buffalo Sabres game has been in recent years. And I'm going to throw out a plug too to end this. If you are a Bandits fan, even if you're not, but especially if you are, PK and his partner Phil at Buffalo Sports Collective, they crush it with Bandits coverage. I mean, they do Bills and Sabres stuff too, and it's good. I ain't got no issue with their Bills and Sabres stuff. It's fine. Nothing unique about the Bills and Sabres stuff. It's just two guys who have their opinions on the ongoing of the team, just like most other content creator shows. But if you're a Bandits fan, if you care about the Bandits, you want to follow the Bandits, you're insane if you're not listening to Buffalo Sports Collective. PK, Phil, they deep dive into that team, and they do a better job of covering the Buffalo Bandits than literally anyone out there. And I'm talking the Buffalo News, talking WGR, talking any podcast, any other podcast, any network, any TV show. Buffalo Sports Collective crushes it when it comes to covering the Bandits. So if you're not following them already, make sure you check that out if you're, especially if you're a Buffalo Bandits fan. All right, on that note, that's going to do it for this episode. Not quite sure what we're doing with tomorrow's show yet. I will have a guest, though. I do know that. Might be actually a brand new guest, somebody who I plan on. If it's not this week, it'll definitely be soon. Actually, a friend of mine, limited podcast experience, but somebody who I've seen before do shows, and I think he's got a lot of skill, and I look forward to bringing him. Might be tomorrow. If not, it'll be soon. I do know for sure, though, Friday, Del Reed will be with me. Again, we're taping the show live from 26 Shirts in Kenmore. And then Thursday, like I said, if you haven't, make sure if you do this. Thursday, Centered on Buffalo, Eric Wood. I'm honored to have been his guest on that show. That drops Thursday. So make sure you go and you check that out. All right. Thank you guys very much for watching, for listening. I'll be back. Brand new episode tomorrow.